Well, good morning, and thanks for joining us for our midweek devotion, which is dedicated to praying for our country and the people in our lives who may be going through a challenging time right now in their own life, and and also to lifting up some of the ways that God continues to bless us, even during the toughest of times. So I brought my coffee. I'm so glad that you could join us. Hello, Pam. So Pam is um, a good Texan. I'll show you my mug, Pam. It has a crusty cowboy on one side, and then this morning, Peggy, and then this saying on the other side. This is like my favorite mug. It says, "There were a hell of a lot of things they didn't tell me when I hired on with this outfit." And that has certainly been true, I think, for all clergy and pastors when it comes to trying to do ministry during these times when we're not able to be together like we normally are. So, good morning. I'm sure there were a hell of a lot of things that you didn't know or were told or prepared for in living through these times, but it's good to have you with us. And I think and I hope that our faith is going to that we're going to have a reminder or two this morning of how that can absolutely make a difference, even now, even during times that we never imagined. So, good morning. So I would like to begin this morning by by reading for you a passage from Exodus chapter 3, and it begins like this. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, and every time I hear that name, I always think of the Beverly Hillbillies because I grew up in the 60s. And anyway, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, who was the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness. And that's when he came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in the flames of fire within a bush. And Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight and why the bush does not burn up. And then the Lord saw that he had gone over to look. And so God called to him from within the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. And God said, Do not come any closer, and take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing, you know, is holy ground, is holy ground. And there's an interesting, really interesting, fascinating story as to why I thought of this passage that I wanted to share with you. But before we get to that, this is something else that I have appreciated that this time gives me, and that's an opportunity to tell you a little bit about some of the amazing people amongst God's people that I know who are going to be celebrating blessings in their life soon. In the next 7 days, going to be celebrating the day that God brought them into the world, their birthday or their anniversary. And so let me run through those. Last week, my executive producer Ruth told me that I ramble, so I'm going to zoom through these quickly, but these are fascinating people, and I think you'll enjoy hearing about them. And if you know them, you can wish them a happy birthday or anniversary. So good morning, Kathy Reset. So the first one is Sherry Brownell, whose birthday is today. So happy birthday to you, Sherry Brownell. Sherry's son, Brett, was in my first confirmation class when I came to Shepherd of Life. Of course, there was only 2 students, her and Kay Graham's daughter, Susan. And so we met in my office and they were knee to knee as we talked about the small catechism. And I feel so bad that that was their confirmation experience. It was just the three of us. And Mike Butler is going to be celebrating his birthday on Thursday. And some of you may know that Mike grew up Catholic. Maybe what you didn't know is that all of the nuns that taught him tried to convince him to be a priest. And his mom thought that that would be wonderful. But Mike said, no, thank you. No thanks. And if any of you feel like unburdening your soul for whatever reason right now, you might check in with him to see if he'd be willing to hear your confession, because what he did end up doing is becoming a cop for Detroit. So as a Detroit cop, my guess is that he's pretty much seen and heard just about everything. Mitch Norris is celebrating her birthday Thursday, and Vanessa Hickman is celebrating her birthday on Thursday. Vanessa's first job, coming from the Midwest, this might not surprise those of you who are from that part of the country, was detasseling corn at the age of 11. She graduated with a double major at the age of 20. My gosh, which helps to shed a little light on why when Vanessa agrees to take charge of something, you never have to give it another thought. And thank you for doing that good deed for our church this week, Vanessa. Candy Collins will be celebrating her birthday on Saturday. She was the first female on both sides of her family to earn a college degree. And because her family is really competitive, she decided to get a master's to make it a little tougher on her nieces. And of course, Candy is also our master gardener, the one who designed and has taken care of our memorial prayer garden for 20 years now. Connor Flaherty, he's celebrating his birthday on Monday. During the past year, Connor has taken on quite a few home improvement projects, which includes everything from plumbing to landscaping to electrical work. And when he was in high school, played tennis. And he played it well enough to make it all the way to the state championship in Minnesota. And serving on our church council this year. Well, Wayne Weisel is celebrating his birthday on Tuesday. Wayne was raised in the Canal Zone in Panama. And because he grew up like I did in the 60s, one of the things that he saw and still remembers is that this was the place that the United States would send their military in order to have jungle training before moving them on to Vietnam. A really unique time in our country's history. Jeff Weislogel is celebrating his birthday on Tuesday. Jeff used to rodeo. I think he's the only person in our congregation that actually rodeoed, and that meant he competed in things like riding wild bulls and doing bareback horses, looking for that 8 seconds. And this is a story he shared that I absolutely love. He never had a single serious injury doing that. And yet, a few years back, he fell off his truck and broke his hip while chasing his cat. Go figure. And Jeff grew up in a little town out in West Texas called Aspermont, and he used to host our men's retreats. And so you might want to ask him sometime how that town got that unusual name. We have a few folks celebrating anniversaries as well, starting with John and Judy Christensen, who will be celebrating their anniversary on Thursday. According to Judy, even though they're going to be celebrating 32 years of marriage, what a lot of people don't know is that when she was a senior in high school, John was in kindergarten. So yeah, I guess she said, I was a bit of a cougar. And I will see you tonight when you come for communion. We're doing communion in our sanctuary by appointment, and I'll see you then tonight. Well, Charles and Kelly Plaskett are celebrating their anniversary on Friday. And when Charles and Kelly first got married, money was so tight that they would often do their shopping at thrift stores. That might bring back some memories for a few of you, just in order to get the things that they needed. And though things are better for them now, over the years, sometimes when they're in other cities, they'll still check out their thrift stores just to see what they have. And Charles Plaskett, we missed you playing online poker. So if you can talk Kelly into giving you a couple of hours on a Monday evening, let me know. We can hook you up. Jim and Jan Rogerson are celebrating their anniversary on Saturday, and Jan shared a really interesting story about the two of them. She said that when Jim first gave me his phone number and email, I found out that he had a lot of phone numbers and a lot of different emails. And so I was really leery and suspicious of him at first. And Jim, I just want you to know that the little picnic table that we attach to our tree that holds the corn, the squirrels love it and come almost every single day to have a little bite to eat. So the next couple, we're almost done, is Jeff and Barbara Nelson. They're celebrating their anniversary on Monday. And there's some folks in our congregation that know that one of the unique things about Jeff and Barbara is that they met at work and that they worked at the same company for years and years and years. But what a lot of people don't know is that when they very first met, Barbara ended up in tears because the corporation they worked for had called together a big meeting in a hotel, and Jeff was brought in from the Midwest, and he was introduced as the replacement for a very popular, very well-liked CFO, which came as a big surprise and a big disappointment for a lot of their current staff, including Barbara. Fun fact, the Dallas hotel where they met was later closed and converted to a minimum security prison. I love that. And happy anniversary to Will and Celeste, who are celebrating their anniversary on Tuesday. So the people of God are just so darn fascinating. And we have a few folks that we want to lift up in our prayers this week that we know, people who are dealing with different sorts of times of uncertainty and loss. So we have 2, 3, just 5, and I'll mention them and asking hopefully that you would hold them in your prayers and maybe reach out to them if you know them. We're thinking this week of Loretta Umbaugh, whose brother Art was hospitalized for heart failure. It sounds like he's getting a little better, and we give thanks to God for that. Susan Raven's sister Carolyn is having a mastectomy today. Our prayers for her. Barbara Lease, we're remembering following the death of her brother Wayne. Also Janet Kasabian Culinary and her daughters Megan and Kathy, following the death of their amazing grandmother Dorothy Kasabian, a dear, dear woman. And Lord, as we pray today for each and every one of these people and their families, we give you thanks for your promise to watch over them and to hold them close. Amen. So now to finish off today's devotion. And let's see, I don't know, I'm looking for how long. I'm determined to get it quick so that we don't have to go on and on and on. Ruth says I ramble. So I'm at 13. We'll definitely be done before 20 minutes. This is a devotion for today. Some of you may have recognized by now that I have something in the frame that looks an awful lot like the eternal candle that normally is located in our sanctuary. And though it may look like that candle, it is because, yeah, it is. In fact, last night I asked Ruth if she would be willing to go with me on an errand. And I said, and after we're done, we can stop by Brahms and get a yogurt, and it'll just take a couple of minutes. And so she said, fine, we'll go for a little drive. So I drove down to the church. And then I came out carrying the eternal candle, and she was not happy about that at all. In fact, she said, John, this doesn't feel right. This feels a little creepy. I'm not sure I'm feeling too good about this. And honestly, I wasn't sure if it was kosher or not. But let me tell you why I have borrowed it just for less than 24 hours. I have vivid memories of when I first started going to church. I was a teenager, and it was a Lutheran church. And I was fascinated by the eternal candle. I was fascinated that no matter when I came to the church, if it was for the youth group, Luther League, or any other occasion, no matter whether it was a Sunday, whether it was a weekday, night, day, whenever I went there, this candle was always burning. And I just loved that. It just seemed so meaningful to me. And I also brought it to share with you and to have it burning as we talk during this devotion, to kind of highlight something that happened in Minneapolis right after all of the protests and riots broke out following the death of George Floyd. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, some of you may have seen this, I shared a video that was posted by a pastor named Ingrid, who serves Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in South Minneapolis, which is located in the neighborhood where the riots first began. And ever since then, their congregation has been doing a lot of hands-on help to provide support for their neighborhood. And one of the people who came to their church was a man who introduced himself as Brian Dragonfly, who works with an organization that empowers Native American youth. Because, as it turned out, their building was located right across from her church. And it was one of the buildings that was completely destroyed by the fires that took place those first nights. And Brian said, although he wasn't there when it started, when he heard and got down there, the building was still burning. And somehow, I don't know what gave him the instincts or the foresight to do this, somehow he felt in that moment that he needed to capture a part of that fire. And so he did. And then he held up a lantern that he had been carrying with him. And he was wondering, and this is why he came, he was wondering if maybe Holy Trinity would be willing to help them tend this fire until they could rebuild. Because he was thinking that its flame, the flame from that fire, might somehow bring some comfort to his community. And so they went into the sanctuary, and Pastor Ingrid agreed. And they shared some of the trauma that each of them had experienced. And then they shared their mutual hope for how this might become something that could lead all of them, the flames of those fires, that it could somehow lead all of them toward a new and better life for all of us. And then Brian shared his belief how in spite of all those flames, that by working together, that perhaps their witness could burn even brighter. And that's when Ingrid recalled a poem by a Native American woman named Joy, who also happens to be our poet's, or our country's poet laureate. And I don't read a lot of poetry, but I am aware that our country has a designated poet laureate, and this is one of her poems. I liked it so much that I thought maybe we could use it today as our prayer. And also because, well, much like the story of Moses and the burning bush, it's filled with reminders that when you are in God's presence, you are always standing on holy ground. And it begins with the word remember. Remember the sky that you were born under, and the moon, and the sun's birth at dawn, for that is the strongest point of time. And remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you breath, for you are evidence of her life and your father's too. And remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, white earth, brown earth. For we are all of the earth. And remember that you are all people, and that all people are you. And that just as you are a part of this universe, the universe itself is right here in you. And on this day, may the power and the fire and the light of God's love continue to shine forth in all that you say and do. And amen, amen to that. So I'm going to go ahead and return this eternal candle back to its home today, right now, just as soon as I can. And as you think about some of the things that are coming up in your own life, may the Lord be with you. And thanks again for joining us.